great testimony. Thank you, Crystal, for sharing. Wow. You've been walking with me all this time. Oh, that's so awesome. That's so awesome. Last week we started a series called The Journey of Faith. We're in the school of faith. And as we hear these testimonies, you can see what the Lord has been doing and the way each person's life has been customized, predetermined by the Lord. There are certain things that the Lord has allowed for His purposes, for His reasons. It's amazing. And it's amazing to hear Crystal's testimony of what the Lord has been bringing her through. The same Father that started to walk with you, Crystal, will continue to walk with you through it all until the end, till you see Him face to face. In Jesus' name. Amen. 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 We continue this series, The Journey of Faith. Today we want to go deeper into another man's story. See, the Bible is full of different stories, and we learn from these different stories. When I hear about Crystal's life, God speaks to my heart. When I hear about Sophia's life, God speaks to my heart. Every person that has shared their testimony here, it's been different, and God speaks to my heart. And I know it's the same for you. As you hear each person's testimony, you say, wow, I can relate to that. And God speaks to your heart. Well, today we're going to also hear a testimony. It's a testimony of a man's life. A man that went through a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges. And I say, wow, if God can take this person through all this, and He can say, wow, even if He slay me, yet will I trust Him. I want to know about that man. I want to say, well, how did you do it? How did you live through all these different challenges? The name of that man is Job. Job. Job went through a lot of challenges. So tonight we're going to learn about his life, his testimony, his story, his journey of faith. And so the title to the message today is Job, a man of faith. And telling that story tonight is Tobias. Come on up, Tobias. Come on up. Come on up, Tobias.
Oh. You have no idea what you've done. I can tell you that. It's kind of funny. Olu had told me that at one point I would be preaching, and I'll give a caveat here. I don't have a memory like Sophia and Olu do, so I have some notes that I'll be scraping around. Olu tells me that at one point that you'll be teaching, and I said, awesome. And then I get a text, and he said, it'll be 2 weeks. Hooray! And he said, it's on faith. And I'm like, ah, right, I dig this is perfect. And he said, through Job. And I was like, oh my gosh. I will admit that I had kind of skipped over that from time to time in the Old Testament, and I knew the story. People talk about Job, and you think suffering. And you think faith. Those are two things. And that's pretty much it. And it stops there. And so we've heard some stories before. And I'll tell you, this has been really an amazing experience to go through this. I want to say I'm very excited for what the Spirit is going to bring to you today. The only thing that's going to get in the way is me. And the only mistakes that are going to be made through this message are me. God has given me a very clear message to bring to you tonight. It's going to end in a challenge. I'm very excited where we're going to end. I just pray that He guides me along the way. I'm sure it'll be fine. So, Job, the book of Job. I want to start with a question. What do you all think of when the word faith comes to mind? I know there's a lot of different words that we have, or I guess expressions we've heard throughout the years. So, let me hear some examples of what faith is.
Truly believing without seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Trust.
Absolutely.
Minus fear.
Fear?
Minus
fear.
No fear.
No fear. Gotcha. That's awesome. Anybody else? So when I was thinking about this, God, there are a lot of different aspects of faith, no question. They're not seeing but believing, knowing that He's there but not being able to hear Him, not fearing anymore, because our destiny is in the hands of someone or an all-powerful God that has a plan for us that we cannot comprehend. Tithing, 10%, I guess is kind of general, but we're called to do that. And interestingly enough, I think that what really tells who a person is what happens in times of trouble. Where does your faith go at that point? Where do you turn to? What are you looking for in your life to give you strength to get you through that moment? And so, thankfully, God has brought us the book of Job to talk about this. This is an amazing story of a man who lived, depending upon who you talk to or what scholar is speaking. It could have been 2000 BC, it could have been 1700 BC, it could have been 800 BC. We're not quite sure. What we do know from a historical perspective is this is probably the oldest book in the Bible, which is really interesting to think of. Before Genesis, now I could be wrong, I didn't put the thing together, or right. But what this is just on historical perspective, is that, wow, this is a really early look at what faith is. And what people, perhaps 4,000 years ago, considered to be faith. And what happens in times of trouble. Who's the cause of that? Very, very interesting. The book itself, and the man himself, Job, pronounced correctly, if you read it over 100 times in a couple of days period, you're going to go, oh my gosh, it's Job, right? He was considered to be the greatest man in the land of Uz. Not Oz, Uz. And that actually was a place. It's pretty amazing. I looked it up, and I'll tell you, Uz used to be basically located right where the intersection of Israel and Egypt and Jordan are right now. Right in the heart of that was Uz. And at that time, there was a man, Job, who was considered to be the greatest man of Uz, or the East. Now, interestingly, too, through the book of Genesis, we learn at one point that Abraham had sent his children away to the land of the East. And some translations say where it was plentiful. So we can kind of take that and, if you will, turn it into, well, this is a land of very much, it's a plentiful, bountiful land. And there's a man here who is the greatest of a plentiful, bountiful land back 4,000 years ago. So he's a pretty important guy. Our friend Job was supremely blessed, without question. He had 10,000 sheep. This is a time where your possessions might have told how great of a person you are. He had 10,000 sheep. He had 3,000 camel, 500 oxen, 500 donkeys, important, and many servants. And he also had 10 children. There's a bit of a twist to this story, but his 10 children at the time were kind of, they were partiers, is the only way to say it. They liked to partake in wine. They would do so at each other's houses. And essentially every morning Job would go and he would sit down and he would offer a burnt offering to the Lord and say, God, if any of my children have sinned against you, here's my offering for them. Every morning. So these are like these are like Israelites gone wild back in the day, is what it is. And literally every night they're partying and Job's praying. And Job, so let this be would be a good way to have your children not party, to say, like, look at the story of Job. If you do this, I'm going to have to, like, sacrifice something every morning for a burnt offering. And then when you explain what that is, they'll probably stop doing that. At any rate, so he's praying every day and he's offering burnt offerings, and he's a man that walked with God. Some of the words that are very important for me to speak to you about Job they're actually just a couple. And Job was a righteous man. He was blameless and he was upright. He feared the Lord. This is huge for this lesson. He feared the Lord and he shunned evil. So those are two things that are going to come together in the end in a very, very powerful way through the Spirit. Job himself he was still a sinner. He was still a person. He's one of us. He's not Jesus. He's not sinless. He's not God. He was upright. He was extremely blessed. And he sin from time to time. He's a person. God bless him very much, but he's still a person, so it's important to remember. So with that in mind, the story goes like this. So you got God up in heaven, and he's hanging out, and some angels come, and they're hanging out with him, and God notices that amongst them is what the Old Testament kind of refers to in some different scriptures as the great provoker, and it's Satan. Very interesting though, when you look at the Old Hebrew, it's the great provoker. What does that mean? He provokes. He's there and been brought to earth to provoke us in ways that will lead us away from God, the great provoker, aka Satan. So Satan's there, and God looks at him and says, Satan, why are you here? What's the good word? What are you doing? And he asks him where he's been, and Satan says, I've been from back and forth from the earth, roaming around here and there and in it, interestingly. So very important to consider this. Satan is going back and forth from the earth, and he's roaming around in it. What's God doing? God's just there. God's omnipotent. God's in everything, right? God's everywhere. Satan has to go back and forth and run around within earth to look for something to provoke. So it's important. Satan's not omnipotent. Satan is not in us all the time. He's not here right now because we're coming together saying, Satan, you are not here. There's an angel right here. Olu's spoken of it. There's an angel at the door. Olu's spoken of it. We are protected right now. But remember, when you go out there, we're out in the world, Satan's around looking to provoke. So this is what is very interesting. The text is telling us that here's Satan coming back and forth from the world, provoking, and God says, have you thought about my servant Job? He's blameless and upright. He fears God and he shuns evil. And if I could get someone to help me with some scripture here, make sure I'm in the right place. Job 1, 9 through 12. If someone could read, I would appreciate it.
9 through 12.
Yes, please.
Satan replied to the Lord, yes, but Job has good reason to fear God. You've always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You've made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is. But reach out and take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. All right, you may test him, the Lord said to Satan. Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but don't harm him physically. So Satan left the Lord's presence.
Thank you, Charlie. So, I think a lot of people struggle with this and just the idea that why did God allow, what's the deal here? Like, God, why would you test somebody through Satan in this way? And we'll get there, but I think the place to start is thinking of this. This is, God had great faith in Job. We think of Job having great faith in God. God had great faith in Job. God said, Satan, this is, I didn't even mention this. He says, the first thing he says, have you considered my servant Job? There's no one else like him on earth. This is a man that God had faith in and said, you can test him to the end, and this man will not curse me. This man will not blame me. So he gives them free will. Satan goes down and a very, you can't imagine more of a tragic set of events that occur. You have Job sitting there, and interestingly, the text says that his children were in the house partying, essentially. They were feasting and drinking wine. It doesn't talk about what Job's doing, it talks about what the children are doing. So Job's doing whatever. He's out there possibly getting ready to do another burnt offering. And a servant comes running up to him and says, oh my gosh, like, I am sorry, this is terrible news to report to you, but marauders came down from the mountains, and they took your 3,000 camel, and all the servants have been put to the sword. I'm the only one who survived. Here I am to tell you. The same moment, another man, servant, comes up, or woman, and says, we were out in the fields, and great fire rained down from the heavens. 10,000 sheep were taken, as well as all your servants who were there. I'm the only one who survived, to tell you. Same moment, someone steps in. Oh my gosh, we were in the fields, and different set of marauders came down from the field, from the mountains, and they took all your oxen, and they took all of your donkeys. They put your servants to the sword, and I'm the only one who survived. Same moment, finishes his story, someone else steps in, oh my gosh, you won't believe it. All your children were together doing their party thing as they normally do in one house, your oldest son, and the Lord brought a wind upon the house. At that point, the four corners of the house imploded upon themselves, killing everybody inside. I'm the only one who survived. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom. All one right after the other. And, I mean, honestly, this guy was supremely blessed, beyond all means, and everything was taken from him at that point, except for his health, of course. So, what does Olu do? Sorry, Olu, weird, I was looking right at you. Are you okay right now? All right. Where is it? Job 120 through 22. Could someone please read that for me?
At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship and said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing.
So, oh my gosh, it's hard. I mean, you read that and you feel it, and it's like, wow, everything taken from you. And what does he do? He shaves his head, sign of mourning. He tears his robe, same thing, sign of mourning and distress, and he falls to the ground and worships God. That's amazing. Like, in my life, honestly, I have like a hissy fit over the lamest things, you know? And you think about this, like, things get me riled up, and I have to calm myself down. Like, that's not important. But it's life, and we make it important. And here's Job. This is the example. The worst that could possibly happen, what does Job do? Falls down in worship to God. He says, no matter what, I will not forsake you, my Lord. Go, Job. It's amazing. Second text, so yes.
Can I just say one thing? I think we often think, well, this is crazy. This is in biblical times. How in the world could someone respond like that today? And yet there was a family in Chicago that it was a very bizarre set of circumstances. When we were there, and they were driving, and something came off of a truck in front of them, and when it came off the truck, it came under their van, and it apparently hit the gas line or whatever. Their car blew up. They got out, and it killed all of their children in the car. And she said, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That verse is overwhelming to me because it was so tangible when you have children at that same time. And I know people have seen her since that I know in Christian circles, and the Lord has given them more children. But that is an amazing thing. We just think that's a story that he had an enormous amount of faith, and we have that same thing today if we're believing him to be faithful. So, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Thank you. If anyone wants to jump in, I've got an outline. It's all good. Thank you.
Throw you off.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the tangible is the word. This is real stuff. This happens today. This is a story, but you're right. This is just a story. This is 4,000 years ago. These are camels and donkeys. Now we have houses, and they had houses then, but now we have cars, and we have motorcycles or whatever. We have dogs, whatever it may be. Nothing can compare to, number one, in Job's eyes, his relationship with God. That was it. So he fell down and he worshipped at that point. So that's not enough, of course. Satan's the great provoker, so he's going to continue to test because Job has passed the test. Again, the angels are all hanging out with God, listening to some music, and God notices that Satan's there. And he asks him, where did you come from? And Satan says, I came from the earth, and back and forth from it, and roaming around through it and in it, provoking. God then says, well, have you considered my servant Job? There's no one else like him on earth. He is blameless and upright. He's a man who fears God and shuns evil. And the text even says right here that, and he still maintains his integrity, even though you incited him against me to ruin him without reason. Could someone please read Job 2, 4 through 10 for me?
Skin for skin, Satan replied. A man will give anything to save his life. touch his body with sickness, and he will curse you to your face. Do with him as you please, the Lord replied, only spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord, and he struck Job with a terrible case of boils from head to foot. And then Job broke a piece of pottery to scrape himself, and he sat among the ashes. And his wife said to him, "Are you still trying to be godly when God's done all this to you? Curse him and die." But he replied, "You talk like some heathen woman. What? Shall we receive only pleasant things from the hand of God, and never anything unpleasant?" So in all this, Job said nothing wrong.
So, it's hard to imagine. Now we've got the parents outside the car who have now been burned completely. And there's no one there to help them. And they're looking and their children are there in front of them and they're gone. And this person is there, unable to move. You got boils all over your body. Inside, you're boiling from within, from what's just happened. And you're stuck. I mean, you're Job. What do people think of when they think of Job? The worst. Whatever happened to Job in the end, well, Job probably suffered worse. Is the same. Who knows? But it's that bad. So Job's sitting there, and he still will not curse God. His wife comes by, "You're a fool. Curse God and die." Like his wife, "Die. Why don't you curse God? You've had enough. God's taken out his vengeance on you," essentially is what's being said here. And Job refuses. So Job's laying there in his ashes, and he has some friends who come, and they've heard of the struggles. So thank be to God, he has some friends who come to comfort him. When they see him, they fall down and they're wailing. They couldn't recognize him. They tore their robes and they spread dust on their head, a sign of mourning. And what they did is it's admirable at the time. They went and they sat with Job in silence for 7 nights. They sat next to him. They didn't say a word. They sat there, everyone, as a respect to Job in their mourning. They did not speak for 7 nights. So they sit there for 7 nights, and after 7 nights, Job had had it. He's sitting there inside, just boiling up and thinking about what's going on. Why would God do this to me? God, I love you. God, I've always tried to be upright in my life, God. I've tried to walk with you. I'm one with you, God. Why would this happen to me? So he's sitting there for 7 nights, and all these things are going through his head. What happens then? Could someone please read Job 3:3-5? 3:3-5.
May the day of my birth perish, May the day of my birth perish, and the night it was said, a boy was born. That day may I turn to darkness. May God above not care about it. May no light shine upon it. May darkness and deep shadow claim it once more. May a cloud settle over it. May blackness overwhelm its light.
So he's just done, Like, why was I even born? What's the point of this, is what he's saying. Really? You're going to bless me, and then you're going to take it away. You're going to curse me with this unimaginable sickness. Why would you what's the point of all this? There isn't a point. I wish I'd never been born. May history curse the day that I was born. So he's sitting there, and Job speaks out, and he's just like, "Oh, this is ridiculous." And he's got these 3 friends who've been so great until now. And these friends are really, really wise individuals in their own heads. And their names, this took me a while. They're Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. Thank you. I thought they were elements from the periodic table, like Zophar, but apparently they're there, and I memorized them, and it took me a long time. So these are his 3 friends, and these are 3 friends who are probably very wealthy at the time. They are of somewhat the same ilk, if you will, as Job was, and they come to, number 1, show him compassion, but then Job's just not doing what they think he should be doing under the circumstances. So they begin to tell him about it. And frankly, we're not going to get into the discourse because it's like 36 chapters of poetry back and forth. And really what it is a bunch of arguments. It's like being in court. You sit there and one person stands up and they give their testimony. And this is it. Everybody listen to me because what I have said is true. And I know the right passage, whatever it may be. Someone else gets up. No. That's not right. Listen to our witness. So for 36 chapters back and forth, this is what's going on. And essentially the arguments are this. You have Eliphaz saying that, listen, Job, you must have sinned because God is good. And if God is good, he would not do something that's bad to you. So you must have sinned. Admit your sin, Job. Just admit it, and it's all good. God will probably put everything back to normal. You have to admit your sin. That's what you need to do. Job says, no. Yeah, I may have sinned, but God's a God of grace and glory. God is not going to do what he's done to me because of the small amount of sin that I've had in my life. And if you think about it, as I was thinking about this, it's interesting in that if you look at the weights here, Job, from what the stories tell us, he wasn't very sinful in nature. And look what happened to him. Like, does it measure up? Does injustice measure up? No, the scales are way off. These other individuals, who knows what their sin is, but they certainly, as they weren't the greatest men in all of East, worthy to be telling Job that your scales are off when their scales are off. Same thing like Jesus says, take the log out of your eye before you take the twig out of the splinter out of your brother's. So at any rate, so this is the argument back and forth, and then you have Bildad and Zophar, and what they're saying essentially is this. They're saying that you need to show a repentant behavior. You need to show less of a sinful behavior in your life because you must be of sin, and your behavior must have led to where you're at right now, interestingly enough. And all throughout, so those are the basic core arguments, and you got Job saying, no, it's not. There's no way. My sin did not cause this. If God caused it, so be it. I wish I was never born. This is terrible. I don't understand. However, it wasn't God punishing me for my sin, is what he's saying here. And I guess this is an old world thinking. I don't want to get too much into this because it's kind of obvious. But back at this point in time, you had people who needed to try to understand who God was. And they didn't have Jesus. They didn't have the Word. They didn't have what we have today. They didn't have all the prophets come through and the Old Testament. They had their understandings as far as we're aware. And so they thought there's only one way that there could be bad is that it's a result of sin. It's interesting. That's the only nexus they can make. Now you have a man who comes along and he says, no, that's not the way it is. That just can't be right. And the reason that I know this isn't just because it's what I think, it's because I walk closely with God. And that's what God's telling me. God's telling me that that's not right. And I walk closely with God. So I'm going to believe my heart for us. I'm going to believe what my spirit is telling me. And I'm going to go with my spirit and my gut on this. You guys were wrong. So this goes back and forth. And like I said, it's 36 chapters, but the meat of it comes up here, and the meat of Job's argument. If someone could please read Job 27, 1 through 6.
And Job again took up his discourse and said, as God lives, who has taken away my right, and the Almighty, who has made my soul bitter, as long as my breath is in me, and the Spirit of God is in my nostrils. My lips will not speak falsehood, and my tongue will not utter deceit. Far be it from me to say that you are right. Till I die, I will not put away my integrity from me. I hold fast my righteousness and will not let it go. My heart does not reproach me for any of my days.
Thank you. So there's a point right after this where Job starts talking about the powers of the Lord and how strong he is and how all-powerful he is. And he comes to this point which I'd like someone to read this, and then we're going to pull out what is the nexus of this whole passage here. Job 28, 25 through 28, if someone could please read that. Job 28, 25 through 28.
He makes the winds blow and sets the boundaries of the oceans. He makes the laws of the rain and a path for the lightning. He knows where wisdom is, and he declares it to all who will listen. He established it and examined it thoroughly. And this is what he says to all mankind. Look, to fear the Lord is true wisdom. To forsake evil is real understanding.
Fear the Lord is evil. To forsake evil is understanding. This is something that I literally meditated on and off for maybe the course of 4 nights. And to me, this has really brought a lot of what people say, fear the Lord, into light for me, and as to why. Because I gotta be honest, before people would say that, and part of me was like, why? Like, God's good. Like, yeah, fear the Lord, because yes, He has power that could crush me in a second, and He has His hand and everything. But then again, God's good. And it's hard for me at this point, before really contemplating this, like, what's there to fear? Like, He's awesome. I love my God, right? Well, there's a reason why the Job says this, or through Job, this word is this. The word is this, that to fear God is wisdom. At this time, wisdom, and you read it in the Old Testament, wisdom and knowledge were considered power, were considered essentially wealth. So a man with great wisdom was somebody that would be looked upon as a very, very successful man. And God says, what's success then? It's knowing to fear me. To fear me. And so I say, what does that mean? This is a 2-step process. Step 1, fear God. That is wisdom. Well, what does that mean? Somebody please read for me Matthew 10:28, if you could. If someone has...
Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell.
So why do we fear God? Job tells us, and the New Testament tells us, and Matthew tells us, the one reason why you fear God is because God can take away your salvation. It's in the text. God is the only one who can touch your soul. Do not be afraid of the men who can take your house away, who can take your family away, who can take your life away. They can't touch your soul. But you fear God because God has dominion over your soul. Right? Like, that was a light bulb for me. Holy cow, now I get it. We're not talking about just, oh yeah, God is fearful. He's just unimaginable. I should be afraid. No, we're talking about eternity. You're talking about what Jesus Christ did on the cross for your sins. That's what we're talking about. Fear God. Step 1. We must fear God. We must fear the fact that God can take away our eternity with Him if we're not walking the way we should be walking. Because of what? Because we haven't shunned evil. Okay? Shun evil. What is evil? This isn't like a scary movie or the boogeyman in the closet. Evil is sin in our lives. True wisdom is what? To fear God. And what is understanding of that? Shun evil. Right? So because we're afraid of losing what God and Jesus have prepared for us, we shun evil. It's what we're called to do. Now, as we go through this actually leads into something else, which is kind of was a revelation for me. But it starts here. Man, this is what's at stake. If I'm not shunning evil, if I'm not living a life or trying to live a life, at least, we're sinners. There's no way. We're not going to be able to do it continuously. But remember this. Satan is a great provoker. What does he do? He hits us where we're weak. Where are your weaknesses? That's a question we all need to ask ourselves. Where's my weakness? Is it alcohol? Is it pornography? Is it lust? Whatever. Whatever it is, this is what God is telling us through the Bible. You fear me. You fear me because if you do not shun what you are not shunning, this is what you're risking. Right? Like, we have this short life, and man, does it go by quick. Unbelievably quick. We're here for a blink of an eye. It's a test. Part of this is a test. We have a choice. We can live a worldly way and enjoy all that the world has to offer and what Satan has to offer, or we can shun evil and fear God. Okay?
You know,
Okay, when we're starting out on there and I'm saying no fear, and now, you know, you're saying, hey, let's go the opposite.
No, but it's different.
Where does my faith come in then?
It
Does
comes
faith
in,
come in the
it's
middle?
hand in,
or
no, it's
somewhere?
hand in hand. You say this, you say, what do you fear in God? What's the worst thing that could happen to you? Like ever.
That I go to hell.
Exactly. So that's what you fear. Now we don't fear
I
God
don't
because
fear him.
you don't fear him for what he's going to do to you
Right.
because you shun evil and therefore you will be with him.
Okay.
So there's no reason to fear technically if you're walking with the Lord. Is what it
Well,
says.
I gotta stay on the right path. Right?
Trust me, we all do. And you'll see. This is, like I said, this is a message that's going to be. This is for. There's a challenge here. Really, it's not easy. It wasn't meant to be. Olu's preached about that. So he has preached about this. It's not easy.
Well, the temptation is always there.
Always,
Always.
always.
It's a great provoking.
Yes. And that's exactly where we're leading. That's exactly where we're leading. So I got to bring it real quick back to Job. We have God who comes down now, and God's like, dude, you all think you know me, and you think that you know what I've done in this world, in this universe. You speak of knowledge, and I've created and molded every single rock on this earth, every little pebble. That entire cosmos that you don't even know is there because you think the earth is flat, yeah, that's me. And you're sitting down here claiming to have knowledge about my thoughts and the way I am. And frankly, I gotta really quickly go on a discourse here. This reminds me an awful lot when you have the 3 friends, and actually 4, but I won't get into that essentially are saying that they have greater knowledge or knowledge equal to God. And I think about that, and I think about where we're at today. And you have people out there, because of their measures and the books and their studies, that say, oh, we figured this all out. We really have. We've got this down. There was a big bang. And let me show you some numbers. And boom, we get it. We don't need to know God because it's science. Whatever it is. It's mathematics. E equals mc squared. I know what the speed of light is. You know what God says? That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Really? Good job, little. It's the same thing. We have people that are claiming to have knowledge that's only meant for God, that God can only have, and you have people down here claiming it. So every time I think about this and I'm reading this, that's something that goes through my head. We are not meant to know these things. This is God.
That's right.
I mean, it's like God, and then we are meant to do one thing, to worship, be servants to Him. And that's it. And thank you, God, for giving us that opportunity very much. We are very, 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 very blessed to have the opportunity to serve an almighty God. Our job is to understand this stuff as we go through it. So God comes down, and basically, he tells Job to stand in front of me and be a man. It's almost exactly the text. Like, be a man and stand in front of me and listen to my questions. And see if you have an answer. And so God goes on, and if someone could read Job 42, 1 through 6.
Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do everything, and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. You asked, who is this, who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. You said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes.
I love that. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I know, I get it, God. Like, and he actually says in the verses, he says that he says, God, I put my hand over my mouth. Because I'm trying to talk about these things that I think I know because I feel like I know them, and then you're asking me, and of course I don't know. So I put my hand over my mouth and try to resist. Put my hand over my mouth and I try not to sin. Put my hands behind my back and I try not to sin. We're still going to do it. It's human nature, you know. But he But he acknowledges. At least he acknowledges. And that's the story. In the end, because he acknowledges and kept his faith, where he had, number one, trials beyond belief, pain beyond belief, Job never turned his eyes away from God. He never blamed God. He's going through a period of what could have been 3 to 4 weeks of having people around you and your wife saying, die, curse God, you've sinned. And Job's saying, no, I will never turn my heart away from God. I will never turn my heart away from God. I will never admit that you know why God has done this to me. So that's true faith through the book of Job. Sitting there in the midst of the worst time saying, you know what? I'm not going to listen to what you people say is the right way to handle the situation, because God is a God that I trust in. Not you, not anybody who's here to give me guidance. It's God that I trust in. And I know that God is going to bring me through. What does God do in the story of Job? He doubles what he had before. So now he has, so I said, it's 14,000 sheep, so he started with 7, 6,000 camel, 1,000 oxen, 1,000 donkeys, 7 sons and 3 daughters. And this time they weren't party animals, so he won all the way around. They were said to be the finest children in the land, essentially. So there's a lot of different things to take away from this, but when Olu was preaching last week, and he was talking about faith, the Spirit talked to me. And I was sitting there, and afterwards I came and I told Olu what I said, and we probably looked pretty giddy. It was like, wow. The Spirit said to me as Olu was talking, I heard a whisper in my ear, and it said, the whisper was revolutionary faith. Revolutionary faith. And it was clear. And so I sat there and thought for a second, like, wow, what the heck is revolutionary faith? And I told Olu as I was leaving, like, revolutionary faith. I was supposed to, you said, revolutionary faith. It's not just faith. So I start looking into the Word, and I start searching my soul. And what God tells me is this, that we're called at this time right now to live a life of revolutionary faith. Revolutionary faith. Job, at a time where everybody, for the most part, said, you have sinned. The result is your demise. Job said, no. You are wrong. I know God, and I'm trusting my Lord. Revolutionary faith. At a time right now where we have evil spreading throughout the world, where we have children dying because they don't have rights even, where we have nations on the border of each other putting their toes in the water, testing to see how warm it is before they jump in. Mighty, powerful nations. There's a storm coming. So the question is, what's next? I don't know. Like, are we headed right towards the apocalypse? Perhaps. But we're called right now at a time to do something, and that's to stand up. It's to say that we are not going to sit here as a Christian family and be non-complacent with this. If you're taking action evil, we're going to have an equal and opposite reaction. We are going to have revolutionary faith. Revolutionary faith, what does that mean? What is it? So the Lord spoke to me in a number of different ways through this, and the scripture that I want to get to is actually what's most important, and it's not my words, of course, so that makes it doubly more important. But I want to say this. This is what God has told me, and then we're going to lead into a bit of a time where we can pray for each other. And God told me this, said, this is what revolutionary faith is. It's extraordinary faith in each other. Number one, extraordinary faith in each other. What does that mean? Faith in each other, trust, love, compassion, givingness, if that's a word. It's our all that we have for each other in a humanly way, not a spiritual way, but of course there needs to be spiritual guidance as well. But we're called to give ourselves to each other in whatever way we need, so that we have community, so that we're a core, so that we start from this, right? And then we move forward. And wherever we go, that comes with us. Wherever God puts us, we're a group. We are, what do you call it? What's the core? There's a term, sorry to put you on the spot. It's the, I can't recall it, so forgive me. There's a word that Olu is using, and The meaning of it is that we are one, in one accord. We are in one accord. And through that, wherever we go, we're still one. Okay, so that's number one. And then number two, we need to have revolutionary belief in this. I mean, and I am so guilty. Like, I neglect this almost every day. I really do. And I neglect friends in my life almost every day. And God said, it's time to stop that.
Right.
It really is. When there's evil out there that we're seeing rising up like it's rising, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and, yeah, I'm not a fighter. I don't know. Maybe this isn't a human war. This could be a spiritual battle. And do you want to take part? Do you want to be part of the kingdom, the soldiers, my Christian soldiers that are going to fight? Like Olu said, what can we do? We can sit here and we can pray. We can come together as one accord and we can say, you know what? Our God is a God that would not stand for that. And our God is a God that answers prayers. And our God is a God that is all faithful and almighty. And when we come together, we amplify that. It's not just us saying, you know, we've got a pretty good signal. All of a sudden, we become like a ham radio, and it can go all throughout the earth. And so we come together for that, through this, through the Word. So that leads me to this. This is a very personal time for me that I'm going to open up a little bit, and I'm not exactly the most open person, as my wife will attest. James, someone please read for me James 5, 13 through 16.
If any one of you is in trouble, he should pray. Is anyone happy? Let him sing songs of praise. Is any one of you sick? He should call the elders to the church to pray over him and anoint him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise him up. If he has sinned, he will be forgiven. Therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous man is powerful and effective.
Amen.